Welcome to Demming Chronicles, Season 2. We speak to persons whose ideas and opinions are different. They may not be part of the mainstream, but they are important. Our hope is to nudge the conversation in a direction of helping our society solve some of our wicked problems. On today's show, we have Maria Daniel.
Welcome,
Hi,
Denise. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for giving us the time. And our next guest, John Thomas.
Hi, Denise. Hi, Denise. Thank you for having me as well.
Thank you very much to both Maria and John. We'll be back with you shortly. Demming Chronicles. Welcome back to Demming Chronicles, Season 2. And we have Maria Daniel as one of our guests today. Maria, when I checked you out, you work on an organization called EY, which is a lovely name. I knew it is instantly. Tell me, what is EY and what do you do?
So EY is, in the old days, we were an auditing firm. That's how we started, a group of accountants doing audit and tax. Over the many years, of course, as life has evolved, we are probably more than 50% consulting and strategy and transactions. So I am what I would say the lead in strategy in Trinidad, and I work across the region. I have taken on the mantra of digital transformation for a firm and helping clients most recently with their digital strategy. Among all the other things I fit in, that's my favorite right now.
So you're one of those power women with lots of hats. And I really
lots of hats.
I really love women who have lots of hats and who are doing it so well. Tell me, digital strategy, are you happy with what is happening in terms of the implementation or rollout of digital strategy in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, unfortunately, COVID had to make us accelerate it. So definitely, no, I'm not pleased at all. If I look at our financial services sector, we're probably 10 to 12 years behind the rest of the world in terms of services, in terms of capability. I'm also the president of the FinTech Association of Trinidad and Tobago, the interim president. And, you know, we're really trying to get FinTech moving in Trinidad. And just for everybody out there, that's really using technology to deliver financial services, right? So you hear about, you know, e-wallets, you hear about being able just making payments. So if we look at what's happening, you know, recently we got the debit cards with the chip, and still we don't have a high amount of the population that can make online purchases. So from that perspective, when we're talking about digital strategy, you know, we have all these great ideas, but we don't have the infrastructure to really push it forward. So I think, so go ahead.
And there are two things that come to mind there when you talk about not having the infrastructure to put it forward. And the second thing that comes to mind in your mention of the cards is, where are we in terms of a cashless society?
So I actually had the pleasure of working with the TTIFC. We probably started 2 years ago of really looking at, can Trinidad be a cashless society? So that takes actually a whole ecosystem to work together to get to this cashless society. And everyone really has to play their part. So there's infrastructure on one side, there's the regulations on the other side. And of course, you have to have the players who are going to have the solutions. And
so you're talking about an interface between the infrastructure, the regulation, and then the players or customers.
And exactly, customers and service providers.
Yes. So where would you say is the weakness in that kind of triangular, if I can call it a triangular situation?
Well, we have many stakeholders there, right? So first of all, we need somebody to take the charge. So I'm happy to see that the government is really talking about going cashless. And if I give some examples of how other countries have achieved it or tried to get close to it, it was really either the regulator or the government that really pushed it and says, this is what we're doing from now on, this is what we're not doing anymore, and here's the regulations to guide it. So Nigeria did that, for example, as one of their methods to fight corruption, was to move to a cashless society. But there are many parts, Denise, so you can't just look at it and say, okay, so the government is one part. We also have to have these service providers. We lacked in Trinidad the financing for some of these startup technology companies to get going. We also have a size of economy where sometimes the big solutions don't suit down here. So we really need local providers to really step up and get the support to really push this forward. But I mean, where there's a will, there's a way. And as I tell people, we, the population, have to be the ones that drive it. We have to be the ones that push it. We have to really want this and make it work.
You know, the man in the street often doesn't know what he or she wants. But we experience other countries and we experience how easy it is that financial transactions occur. But when we come home, when we think of locally, financial transactions are still extremely difficult and cumbersome. How can we address that?
So, I mean, just going along the same line, people also have to want to change, right? So, online banking, I mean, people think it's our age is the problem, but some of it is not. I mean, I have dealt with young entrepreneurs, and during COVID, they're like, well, I have to go to the bank. And I was like, well, why do you need to go to the bank? Why are you not using online? Oh, I never really thought about it. I said, please go and try it. And when they did it, it was like, why was I going to the bank? So, part of it is responsibility ourselves to change the way we do business. And the more we use the online and the more we use these, services, it's then people are going to invest in the technology. Because what's going to happen eventually is if you don't have it, because it's easier, we're not going to use or buy your products. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you want to put it that way. If we don't start using it and demanding it, no one is going to spend the money in order to get it done.
But the data tells us that we have an aging population and older people, I may say, if I may say so myself, older people sometimes are a little bit hesitant to buy into technology. So is there that issue, is there that problem of an aging population and a lack of understanding of the use of the technology?
And this is actually something, part of what the FinTech Association that I'm part of is really going to push, right? And part of the reason they might be hesitant is they lack the knowledge, right? So it's really having an outreach program, even in community centers, etc., just to show everyone how easy it can be. Banking halls can put, customer service reps that will have the iPads, walk them through it. And then once they start to use it, and they see how simple it can be, I think we're going to see much more adoption. One of my friend's mothers, I mean, she's on WhatsApp all the time. When she says OMG and she says all these things, we're like, okay, this is a 70-something-year-old. Yeah. So it's not impossible. It's really not impossible.
Okay, let's just switch the conversation a little and talk about the infrastructure. You talked about the importance of infrastructure. Tell us, break that down for us.
Right. So when we look at the infrastructure, you have many different parts. So bandwidth is one, right? We have to have the bandwidth available so that online services could be anywhere. But again, I'm seeing the government, saying that we're going to get the infrastructure, we're going to, make the bandwidth wider, etc. But infrastructure is not just the technology or the pieces of equipment, but the infrastructure is everything else that supports. So I'm going to take infrastructure just for this conversation a little bit wider. Right? So when I talk about infrastructure, it's also knowledge of the population, right? I am going to dip in there and, kind of push it a little further and say our education system also has to change, right? So when we're talking about, we want everyone in the future to start thinking cashless. We also have to educate people of being programmers, coders. As far as I'm concerned, coding should be like math and English now, because this is where we're going to go. Not that everybody has to become a coder, but you have to kind of understand all these things. So when we talk about infrastructure, it is, yes, the technology, yes, the support services, but you also have to have all the other pieces that are going to support this whole movement into technology. One cannot work without the other. And I think that's the most important point here. It's an entire ecosystem that needs to work together to get it done.
Let's talk a little about the regulation. Do we have the appropriate regulations that will help the industry or help us to become really a digital or cashless society?
It's getting there. It has moved forward, but it's not there totally. So the regulators are trying, but they really need to accelerate. And I'll tell you why. There's certain, thanks to COVID, Mr. COVID has helped us a lot in this part. Before, no one was going digital in certain industries, especially in financial services, because the regulator was saying, I need physical signatures. Thanks to COVID, that has been relaxed a bit. So there's a lot that we need to do. So the e-money order came recently. That's good. So we're moving in the right direction. But my worry with Trinidad and Tobago is this. We're always catching up, and we're always catching up. We actually need to leapfrog. We need to look ahead of where, not going sequentially, but saying, okay, where it is the rest of the world, and how do we get there faster? How do we leapfrog without going through all these steps? We don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? We have seen, everybody talks about Estonia. I know the government is working with Estonia. They have so many other jurisdictions that are very similar to ours that we can now go and say, okay, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and we can really accelerate the regulations, go through other countries, see what worked, and, just plug it in.
That is music to my ears, because I often say that any problem Trinidad has been solved somewhere else, and it has been solved at a scale that we can use. So really, I'm happy to hear you say that. But let's continue the conversation about the digital strategy. For a small business, what would you say the basic digital strategy should be? What should it encompass?
Right. So the first thing I will always start with, as I tell all my clients, is your digital strategies is an enabler to your business strategy. So from a small business, here's what I would tell you. Everything does not need to be digital, right? It does not have to be digital. What you have to look at is, how am I going to use digital to differentiate myself for my customer experience, right? So you really have to think about, if I have a limited budget and I have to start with piece of my digital strategy. So what you really need is a roadmap. This is where I'd like to be in 2 to 3 years. And what you start with is really, what is the biggest pain point for my customers? How can I solve that with digital? And how can I, from there, continuously improve? As I tell people, if you look at Amazon, and of course we all use Amazon as an example, it was a bookstore, an online bookstore. And every month or year, they keep adding on and adding on. So what that does for you is your competitor could never catch up, because you're continuously improving. So a small business, look at what already exists. You don't need to reinvent. You want to do delivery, you want to do online. There's Food Drop, there's Skip the Line. There are a number of apps that already exist. You don't need to do your own thing, right? There's the plant and seeds marketplace. There are many things out there now that a small company does not have to do it themselves.
And if I can invite you to dream, think of Trinidad in 5 years. What would you like to see Trinidad being in terms of its digital platforms?
How much time we have here? Okay, so I'll prioritize there. First up, I'll go with my pet peeves, right? Simple ones as far as I'm concerned, digital can solve. Let's start with the education, right? So I do not support our current system. And I think technology can really change that. We can take the best teachers and now offer it online to as many schools as we want, and also have the physical for the mentoring and the extra help, right? Let's start there. Digital could solve that. What I would like to see in our education, if we could have changed it in 5 years, is that everybody doesn't have to do maths and English to feel like they have accomplished. If we get children away from feeling like failures at 11, I think the root cause of our crime, our social problems will be solved. So that's my first pet peeve. My second pet peeve, which I think digital can help, is the potholes. I would like to take a picture of my pothole. It's uploaded into a platform, and there are little systems all over the place that come and fix our potholes. You could do that with drones. The technology is there. So in the same way, I will tell, business people, look at what is your customers' biggest pain points. Government and country-wise, look at what are the citizens' biggest pain points, and let's focus the digital strategy there first. That's my view.
All right, so you've given me two of your pet peeves. One is education, and the other one is the potholes, and that's a really very creative approach to dealing with those potholes. Because I have a different kind of pet peeve. It's a similar thing. I have a pet peeve of manholes. That the pavements are just horrible. So, as we bring this interview to an end, Maria, what would be your parting advice to business, to government, to the citizens?
My advice would be to everyone, especially when you're thinking about technology, is first of all, get yourself in the know. And what do I mean by that? A lot of people feel that technology is going to cost them a lot of money. It has evolved a lot. And don't look in the Western Hemisphere, look in the Eastern world, because there are solutions that are for small countries. There are solutions that are out there. Get yourself in the know. You can get apps for $200 a month that is going to do your inventory, your social media, your ordering. So what I would tell everyone is you want to Google, you want to be on your computer, get off of the social media and get yourself educated in the know and use that knowledge to become a differentiator for whatever is your product or service you're trying to do.
And on that note, thank you very much, Maria. We've had a wide-ranging discussion from the cashless society to changing the ecosystem to ensuring that we have this infrastructure to support our digital requirements. We talked also about the education system and how we can use the top teachers to teach the top students and have a blended
All
approach.
students, all students.
All students, yes. And if we did that digitally, then it would be available. So we talked about having a blended learning approach, and we even talked about potholes and manholes. Thank you very much. Here we see a combination of strategy and digital transformation. Thank you very much,
Thank
Maria.
you. Thank you very much.
We'll be back shortly. Demming Chronicles, Season 2. Stay with us. Welcome back to Demming Chronicles Season 2. And in our studio today, we have John Thomas. I know him as a big voice. I know him as someone who's extremely creative and extremely busy. But John, what brings you joy?
What brings me joy? People understanding that when one has a full understanding that we do not exist in this world alone, and that we need each other.
So the interconnectedness is what I hear you say, that interconnectedness of people and our interdependence on each other brings you joy. And that is music to my ear, if I can use that analogy. Tell me, what to you is creativity?
Well, to be very honest with you, when I think of creativity, I think that it is our God-given ability to be able to survive, to be able to cope. It is something that happens when we need to be able to work within situations. So, a lot of people think that a creative is somebody who goes up on a stage and sings or paints a beautiful painting. But really, we are all creative, and I think that it manifests in different ways. I think doctors are creatives. I think lawyers are creative. We all have to come up with new ways constantly to survive in this world. And the people who come up with the systems that we live in were creative. And maybe it worked within those times. But now I see that we need new creatives to think of new systems that we can survive in, because
Can
we,
you
so
tell
we,
me,
we
can you
live
tell
in a,
me more about when you say that the people who created the world we live in, they were creatives, and we probably need to reframe that? Tell me a little more about what you mean.
what I mean is that in every age, you would have the people that exist, and they would come up with ways to live, modes to live for the masses to follow. For instance, we live, as I was telling you yesterday, we live in a matrix right now, and I believe it's a field system. Um, so right now, I think we need the creatives to think about how we should move forward. And I also think that living in this pandemic should motivate humans slash creatives to find better ways to exist, because I, for one, am becoming very frustrated.
And your frustration comes why? Because you're not performing? Or what is causing that
I
frustration?
perform every day. When I get up from bed, I start to perform one time. So no, the performing is not the issue. It really, my frustration comes out of what I perceive, because I'm sure that my effort and the efforts of the people around me are, appreciated. But what um, in the larger context, it feels as though efforts are not appreciated as much as we would like it to be.
Mhm.
That's
And
my frustration.
okay, that's your frustration. But John, just in case people listening or viewing this vlog, they don't know what you do, tell us. What do you do, John?
Ah, well, currently I teach at St. Joseph Convent and CIC. I teach the choirs there, and I also am a vocal coach and impresario. I produce shows. I come up with creative ideas for many different people for different things like music videos or concepts for different programs and that kind of thing. So people would call me to do all sorts of things. So,
So
my
you,
work is expansive.
all right. So you would be regarded as one of those persons who will create a program, create an activity, create a show. But
Correct.
there's another side of life, and traditionally we see a link between the lawyer, the doctor, the economist, and so on, with income generation. And we often don't see the link between the creatives and income generation. Would you like to tell me what is your take on that?
Oh gosh. Well, again, it all depends on the society that you're brought up in. Culturally, we have to be brought up to appreciate, getting back to appreciation, to appreciate something. And when you appreciate something, you give, and your actions would suit. I do not think that Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean are reared to appreciate the arts in the way in which we would like it to be. So the mindset is that of singing would be a favor, or performing or creating a piece of art would be a favor, rather, and it would be something like a pastime. And whilst that may be all well and good for some people that can manage that, um, there are others that devote their lives to this. And so, it is all about, for me, um, trying to plant a seed in early stages, so that one can so that the society then can now be one where we can appreciate fully the art, and we can be able to understand that, yes, if the doctor provides this service, we have to pay the doctor, and the artist has to provide this service, and we pay the artist just the same. Art is life, and many people don't seem to understand that it is more serious than you think. than we think.
John, if you had a magic wand that you could wave and change things in terms of the creative sector, what would you focus on?
Oh boy. Hmm.
What
I
would you
would focus on
change?
the. I would focus on education. Um, I would instill uh, art appreciation from and not just coloring and drawing, but more storytelling. Um, I think it's really very important. Um, our stories and our lives. We have to share our experiences, and from that the younger generations will be able to now be able to foster a better appreciation. And I know that I'm continuing on the same uh, thought process and the thought patterns, but really and truly, appreciation is what I'm thinking of constantly. Um, I I feel as though uh, the artists and artists are not appreciated, and so I would change the thought process of the younger generation if
It's
I had a mind.
interesting. It's interesting that you raise the issue of telling our stories. I thought that we had quite a strong oral tradition that told our stories. How do you feel about that?
We do and we don't. Um, we do because we have these. In Trinidad, everything is a competition. We have been focusing on winning competitions, and that's the culture that we've been brought up in. And to me, it should be more of a process of sharing with each other. And within that spirit, I think um, a more genuine approach would be felt, or a more how should I say? Um,
Well,
I
it
feel
could
as
be
though
a more
so
intentional approach in terms of telling our stories. Because to me, what is lacking is we do not seem to have a structure and a system that will
correct,
intentionally share the stories.
correct. But
Mm.
also the way in which the intention. Why are we focusing so much on competing? Why are we not organically sharing our experiences with each other and learning from them and growing from them? That to me has been a big issue. Um, and the perpetuation of a culture of competing in Trinidad and Tobago has been more of a deterrent to me than allowing people to grow in our sphere.
Mm. And but I couldn't have this interview without asking you, how has COVID impacted you?
Well, um, it has forced me to embrace technology. Um, I deal a lot with choirs, and so our tradition is singing and using the breath. And the problem with COVID is expulsion of air. The spread it happens through expulsion of air. So we've had to circumvent that as best as we could. Um, and so we had to come up with new ways to continue our choral tradition. And that has been really very exciting. We've been using green screen technology. It's painstaking, but it has given us or given me a freedom actually. Um, I have not been able to express myself uh, in ways that I would be able to now. For instance, with a green screen, you can do anything. You can make people fly. You can make them angels. You can make them and appear in clouds and all sorts of so many different possibilities. So that's what we've been able to do, actually. So it has been very exciting and rewarding, and long after the pandemic, we will continue to use the technology to enhance our performances. I think it's a really very good tool. And I think once the teething process has passed, we will embrace this and we'll become more used to it. And we'll be seeing a lot more persons doing it. And it also opens the possibility of having international choirs, people doing things right here at home and abroad and doing collaborations that way. And we see it online a lot, but in the Caribbean, we don't have many people doing it. And I'm very excited to the possibilities and things that can happen in the future.
And as we bring this interview to a close, John, what is your parting comment? What are your words of inspiration or of doom? But I hope it's more words of inspiration. What would you like to share with us?
The young lady in the interview said it before. Once there's a will, there's a way. That's actually my mantra. Mm-hmm. And I feel as though, and I don't want to sound cheesy, but the spirit of community is very, very important, and we have to rely on each other. And I feel as though once we do that, we can see a way forward through this pandemic and through our failed system that we currently live in.
And on that note, thank you very much, John, for being part of Demming Chronicles. This week's edition, we spoke with John Thomas, and one of the themes that I see coming out of that is our appreciation, that we need to be educated to appreciate the arts and the creative side of all of us. He's also talked about the possibilities of the Caribbean doing a lot more collaboration and showing the world what we can do in terms of our cultural expression. And the other message that I got from John was that creativity is not only about performing arts or painters, that doctors, lawyers, accountants, everybody has some level of creativity, and we really need to express that. Demming Chronicles. This week's program, our two guests, Maria Daniel talking about digital transformation, and John Thomas talking about creativity and all the wonderful opportunities that Trinidad and Tobago has. Demming Chronicles. Reach out to us on social media, pop us a question, make a comment, like and share our editions. Demming Chronicles. That's it for this week, and be safe.